Hey everyone, welcome to another live TOH Live. I'm here with Jenn Nawada and Mark McCullough. Jenn's our landscape contractor and Mark is our masonry expert. We're here to talk about patios and all things related to patios. So I hope everyone's doing well on this Wednesday in the quarantine world. Mark and Jenn, you guys keeping busy?
It's springtime. The spring does not stop for coronavirus. So just trying to get organized, and you're not allowed to work in certain areas yet. So yeah, it's kind of incrementally starting.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, definitely. We're kind of stuck at the gate. Everybody's chomping at the bit, ready
exactly.
Ready to go.
I'm like, please don't hate me. Don't me there, I swear.
Your clients all being patient with the process and
Yeah, everybody gets it, so it's not hard. But again, we are just chomping at the bit, ready to go.
All right. Well, welcome those of you who are joining us. Again, we're here to talk about patios and and patios and sitting walls actually. And Jenn, I understand you guys, well, Jenn and Mark both, you guys had some thoughts you wanted to start off with some quick tips and pointers on sitting walls in particular. Jenn, you wanna give your thoughts on that?
Sure. So it's all about creating spaces in your yard, whether they be decks, patios, gardens, whatever. So, but today we're talking about patios, and it's just nice to come out to a clean surface, to go grill, to go read a book, to just hang out. And I like to incorporate sitting walls for many reasons. Number one, to anchor the end of a patio. It creates the shape of the room. It dictates this is a different space, right? So it's also another place to sit, and it's another way to add another element of whether you use stone or concrete block. I always prefer natural stone, but it really helps create the room.
Okay. And so from a design, you really deal with the design aspect of it, right? And getting proportions right, or getting like what's the right height for a sitting wall?
Well, think of a chair. Go in your house, measure a chair. They're anywhere from like 18 inches, 22 inches. So say we build an 18-inch wall and then we put a 2-inch cap on there. It gives you the perfect 20-inch sitting height. It also depends on the height of the client. If you're designing for an NBA player, you might go a little higher.
And how about depth? Like, is there a depth that you like to stay in, like range wise, or does it matter?
It depends if you're going to go 2 feet wide, which is a substantial sitting wall, or 18 inches, and then you have to look at it in comparison to the house, to the structure. Does it feel too heavy or too big, or is it going to dominate the space? Because if the patio is too small, sometimes it doesn't make sense to add it on because it might take up room or just feel too heavy. But you have to look at it in relation to the existing structures. Would you agree, Mark?
Well, I wholeheartedly, actually, because when I started in the trades and people wanted a patio, they'd ask for suggestions. Mark, how big this way, how big that way? And a lot back then was true and square and set up in a certain way where it was easy. But now you're going to add all these different elements, not only the seating and sitting walls, but, cooking apparatus. So there's going to be a cooktop, there's going to be some kind of refrigeration, there's always got to be the fire pit, right?
Right.
So when you're starting to incorporate all these elements into your backyard space, which again is either going to be large or small, but the reason to bring in a designer right away is because he or she can handle the proportions. That's what they're trained to do, such as yourself, Jenn. You guys have that, what we call the eye, and it's always a good starting point, right? And then again, you're going to know how to seat the walls. You're going to know where that the kitchen end of it wants to start. Something a mason really isn't capable of doing, although some might say they are. But usually the designer's really got to set it up. And again, million heights that you have to play with.
Right, and then also, the big question is, how do you want to use this space, and what are you using this space for? List all the things, like, do you want a cook station?
Yeah.
What do you want in that? Just a grill, or a grill, refrigerator? and something else? Do you want how do you want to use the space? How big is your table going to be? Is it going to be round? Is it going to be rectangle? Like, because space gets filled up pretty fast, and a lot of people think, whoa, that patio is huge. But then when you start putting all the elements in, heating lamp or whatever, it gets taken up. It's just like a room in a house.
Yeah, exactly. And to that end, you have to make sure everything is pitched properly on the patio. Because you're going to put up these walls, if you pitch it, the wrong way, now you're going to have pooling, you're going to have puddling. That also leads to the discussion that you're going to want to have about how high your patio is off of grade, or is it level with grade? And there are different reasons on why it might be one way or the other. But again, just part of the discussion at the beginning.
And then, so maybe explain what pitching is a little bit more, because I don't think people know what that means.
Well, say my patio was to my back, I would want to put going away from the house, I would want to get a slight pitch going. So that's why some of these patios, depending on your grade that exists in your backyard, you may want to pick the patio up 8 inches. That way you can pitch from the back all the way to the front so the water does drain properly. But
usually it's not something, the pitch you can't see by eye. It's usually like 1/8 of an inch per foot almost, maybe. Just enough to see it sheet off, but you won't be able to see your patio.
You don't want to feel it on your feet, and you don't want to see it on your eye, right? So there are actually calculations, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, per foot, depending on what you have. But sometimes it's get as much as you can to get the water away so it doesn't pool. But those are the things that the designers, again, Jen's going to bring up right at the beginning of the entire project. The first discussion is going to be, where is it, and how's it sit, and how's it relate to the lawn?
And
and how, sorry, go on, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, and then Mark, you take that drawing, those plans, and you decide how it's going to be built, like if you're going to pour walls, or if you're going to dry stack, or do all that sort of thing, or is all, like, at what point, how much of an involvement are you in deciding how the thing gets put together?
Well, it's, for instance, if I was to do a big fireplace, I would definitely use a footing. And what I would do for that footing is, I always want it 12 inches thick. I always use a re-rod grid inside of that pad. So to keep everything.
Is that a rebar connected to each other to keep from cracking? Is that?
That's exactly right. It's various sizes of re-rod. Usually in a pad that I was going to do for an outdoor fireplace, I probably use re-rod that was 3/4 of an inch thick.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and I cut them accordingly, and then I would just crisscross them and tie them together with wire. I would make half of my pour, and then around 6 inches in a 12-inch pour, I would take that grid, put it right into the middle of the pour. And now I know I have a secure pad. But what I would also do, to make sure in New England, I want to get under the frost. So if I had a footing that was 5 or 6 feet long, 2 feet wide.
And we're talking going up, right? We're talking about a fireplace above ground that you actually filled, not a fire pit, right?
So it's Jen, what would you call mine? Just an outdoor fire?
Yours is a fireplace, but it is a structure, and so if you don't have a footing, you don't want that to slump.
Because it'll slide all over the place. But what we do when we pour that 12-inch pad, Jen, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but we actually will take 2 sonotubes and we'll go down 4 feet, 4.5 feet with those, and we will make that pad a monolithic pour with those sonotubes. So we'll pour the sonotubes and the pad at once, and essentially what that does is take my pad down the 4 feet below the frost. So my stability is going to be there, and that's why I'm going to be able to build, something like I did at my own house, which is a substantial structure, if you will.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. Okay, I didn't realize that much went into the actual building the structure like that. And that obviously that helps with longevity, right? You're not going to have cracks. You're not going to have any, like Jen said, shifting, slumping, anything like that. So creating that, is there a general rule for how large a sonotube per square foot of space, or is it really just depend on each individual design?
It does depend on each individual design, but one thing for sure is that sonotube is going to want to go from the bottom of the pad all the way down 4 feet below grade. Now that's New England, but there are other cold climates in the country that would abide by the same thing.
Can you just talk for a minute, explain to folks how frost works and why it's important to get to that point?
Jen?
Go for it, Mark.
So anyway, in New England, you can get frost that, in theory, will go down 4 feet. So Mother Nature is much stronger than concrete, and if the frost goes down and you're not prepared, and it gets under your footing, so if you're, say, 2 feet down and that frost gets under that footing, it is going to push that footing all over the place, and that's when you're going to see the cracks that Jen is talking about. That's the movement that we don't want. And again, I could just put that fireplace on top of a 12-inch pad, but because of the frost, I want to go down. And that's why I said 4 feet, maybe 4.5 feet. Grab the extra 6 inches. You're digging anyway. Concrete's cheap, and relatively speaking, of course. So.
And you're, from a design perspective, you in respect to sitting walls and with the fireplaces, are you speccing like dry stack stone for the sitting walls and then a veneer on the fireplaces, or is that a conversation that you have with the contractor like Mark, or
it's a conversation you have, but you still have to build the form, right? You have to build, whether it's a cook station, you're building forms for a grill to fit in or a refrigerator to go in, or drawers. And then you would do that with block and then veneer, brick, stone, concrete, pavers, whatever material you use. But you still have to build the form, right?
And with respect to the sitting walls, Jen, you like a dry stack. You like the natural stone. I keep saying dry stack, but I realize it's not right, because you could sometimes do a mortar joint or whatever. But you
could do like mortar in the back. But I like to have minimal joints showing. Like, I prefer to see minimal mortar, but you do have to have mortar in there. But you can achieve a similar kind of look with veneer stone, all this natural veneer stone coming out. If you're a mason who knows how to piece it together properly, it could look just like a freestanding dry laid wall.
And Mark, what's the difference for you in terms of, like, if Jen designs a natural stone sitting wall versus a veneer stone wall? What's the difference for you in terms of how those two things get built?
Well, the dry stack, which is proper, and again, where Jen and I both have the same taste in stonework. So, Jen, my sitting walls, those were laid dry, and when we call those dry walls, it's because you cannot see the mortar.
Right.
So behind the stone, if again you know what you're doing,
right,
you know how to build a wall, you can stuff mortar into balanced stones. Don't forget, Jen, we tell everybody all the time, there is a flat face to every single stone.
Right.
Sometimes you have to chip it with a hammer, or sometimes you have to prop it up so you'll get that flat face on the outside. We will put shims back there to hold it in place, but we always slap, some sand and Portland cement mixed up. We'll always put that behind the wall, so when that solidifies, that rock will be in place and it's not going to go back and forth. But you get away with the dry look for those stone walls because it's what everybody likes. They're natural looking, but when you get to a structure, because it may move, you're going to want to go solid, and that's when you'll build the frame of a fireplace. And again, I'll just use the example of an outside fireplace again, but you'll build that frame out of concrete block, and then you'll take a veneer stone which matches the walls as close as possible, and then you'll actually stick that veneer stone onto the fireplace. And you have to remember that this day and age, the veneer stone, which is about 2 inches thick, it's actually a real stone. You can buy manufactured stone. We used to call it fake stone way back in the day.
Lick and stick?
You can buy or the lick and stick is what some people are looking at today, which is, it's still a quality product these days.
Yeah.
But they do take natural stones right out of the ground, and they'll cut you a cornerstone to put on a cinder block that simulates, a big fat stone. So the look can be achieved, and that's why they do it. They're not going to try to build something dry when it's got.
I mean, the look can totally be achieved. I mean, when you buy them, they come in like milk crates, and they say, okay, this is going to cover 15 face feet.
Yeah.
Square feet.
Face feet.
Face feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you, for corners, you order specific corner pieces. They have stones cut like already like that just fit right in. It's pretty sweet.
Right. And those stones are usually indigenous to the area. So there's a stone that we use up here quite a bit called New England Field Run. And that's just because it's picked out of the earth right here, and it can simulate the dry wall, and you can use it for the hardscape. So,
isn't that how you built the Manchester project?
Well, no, the Manchester project, we didn't have to cut them or trim them, but we pulled them right out of the ground, because obviously we had done more work than what was there before.
Right.
So we had to yeah.
So,
we dug it up and we took a wall apart as well. So
Chris, you got us talking about rocks. It's not
I know, great. I know some folks have a bunch of questions, and before we get to those, I have two things I just want to clarify. First of all, what is face foot? Is it what you call it? What you call instead of square foot, you used a different term.
Well, you can use it's a square foot measurement, but it's just the face. So we're giving you square footage of
like
Got
a face, like
yes.
this.
Yeah. Well, what was the term you used? Face feet.
Face feet.
Is that an that you guys
like
use for
masonry slang?
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
My face feet.
The second question I have with respect to the difference between an all stone sitting wall versus a veneer stone sitting wall. Do you pour a footing like you do for a fireplace for both of those scenarios?
You go, Mark.
Okay, I do not. A dry stone wall is built to move. People don't really understand that, but they're built to move. So we always go down, and again, I'm talking about New England specifically. We go down 12 inches, 13 inches. We'll fill that with compact gravel. So we do have a solid base. I'll keep it below grade a couple inches before I lay my first stone. And then you start the stone laying process. Of course, you get your starter course down, and then that begins your wall. And within that wall, you see your face wall, but behind that, in the middle, we're going to use gravel. That's going to help us with drainage. That's going to help us balance the stone. And then, as we said a few minutes ago, we're going to incorporate mortar to help us balance, and then work our way up to our height, and then cap off.
Okay.
But gravel footing for that, and then what we were just talking about, all the kitchen stuff, you're going to want to go solid.
If you're going to veneer a sitting wall, you're going to do a footing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we got some questions here. Christina on Facebook is asking, we're about to have a patio relaid using the old bricks. How much preparation should we do for the landscapers, meaning cleaning the bricks from dirt and moss, for example? Thoughts on that?
They're talking just the brick or prepping?
Sounds like the brick. It sounds like the actual brick. I'm assuming from the question that Christina posed is that they're pulling an old patio up that was all brick, setting it aside, and then having it relayed professionally, perhaps. Like, what should they do with those bricks? Anything beforehand, or just assuming a mason or whoever's going to put it together?
Yeah, to me, moss and dirt on a brick on a patio, sometimes it's part of the look.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any clumps of mortar, or obviously knock off the clumps of moss, knock off the clumps of dirt. If the brick has mortar on it, and it probably doesn't because it's an existing patio, but clean the brick off is fine. But don't forget, once everything's back in place, you can power wash, let the brick dry, and then do your sand.
Okay.
So
All right.
as long as there's nothing clumpy on that brick, they should be fine.
Okay. All right. Hopefully that helps, Christina. Thanks for joining us and asking the question. Andrew on YouTube is asking, what's the best place to get patio pavers and supplies? A big box home center or a more specialty supply house? Do you have any tips on getting the best materials for the best price in those two scenarios?
Well, when I'm working on a design with clients, it's really hard picking. It's like picking a paint color. It's like really hard picking the color, and once you see it, you can't. If I bring over a sample of two bricks or two pavers, you're not going to really get the feel of it. And there's a lot of showrooms that you could go to that carry multiple different brands, right? Whether it's a big home center or one specific to masonry. And they often at these places they have like 3x3 tiles, and they have all the pavers laid out together in the pattern that you're going to lay it in. So I think it's really helpful to compare and contrast and say, I definitely don't like that look. I love that texture. I love this pattern. Would you agree, Mark?
I feel the same way, and because pavers over the last decade and a half have become so popular, you're going to find these warehouses that mass produce them, and they'll ship those out to the mom and pop stores, if you will. But to Jen's point, you're gonna want to get as much look as you can from the pavers because the colors do range, and of course patterns are different with.
And there's multiple shapes, so some paver patterns have 3 or 5 different shapes.
Yeah.
And, you want to see how the pattern looks. It's different on the computer than in real life. So
yeah, totally.
I think it's important for homeowners to do their homework too. If we're installing it, instead of us showing up with something that doesn't represent what's going to be in their yard.
Right. And Jen, a lot of these pavers now come with patterns.
Yes.
Specific designs, like you can have a bullseye, put, in the middle of a patio to accentuate maybe a round table or a round stone wall.
Right.
But not only are the shapes different, but the designs are different as well. So
get yourself a circle pack, yeah?
That's right. No.
And so just for Andrew's benefit, so the supply houses, it sounds like, is a really great place to start. And I imagine too, people there who are working there and running them have probably some insights and can offer some help and guidance on materials or even like guidance on what might durability and all that sort of thing, right?
Right. So look up masonry supply shop, like retail friendly masonry supply shops. Like that's really helpful.
Got it. Cool. All right, Andrew. Thanks for joining us and writing in. And Annette on Facebook is asking, how can you dress up a cement patio, as in making it not so plain and ugly? Stain, texture, anything. Any thoughts on that from either of you guys?
Where is she? I wonder where. Does it say where she's from? Is she down south?
She didn't say. Maybe Annette, if you could let us know where you are and what part of the country you're in, we can.
Because we did this Ask segment down in Florida, and they just had a big slab, and what we did is we had, I forgot the exact product, but it was a spray application on, and then 2 different types of applications, so it made it look like it was marbled. And actually, they laid down tape, and then they created patterns that made it look like there were pavers. And at the end of the job, when the paint was dry, we peeled up the tape, and it looked like there was like tiles out there. And I thought that was pretty cool.
No, that was really cool, Jen. But it's really important to find out, where she's from, because the climate will have a lot to do with what you can apply to existing concrete.
Exactly.
Yeah, but even doing a simple stain, if you do it in Florida, I would do it all day. It can beautify concrete in an instant. But if you do that same stain up in New England or other cold climates, when rain or snows falls on that, the stain, there's actually a sealer that's built into the stain, so it will repel the water. And in the wintertime, when the water repels and it kind of bubbles onto the concrete, that will eventually turn to ice and just, make for slippage. So
Got
Know
it.
your product, know your climate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is staining concrete a homeowner DIY friendly project, or is it like what's the difference between staining and etching? I guess are they the same thing?
Staining is very, very simple. If you're doing a patio, all it is a roller and a bucket, if you will, whatever you're using it out of. But it's simple stuff, and the stain actually penetrates that concrete, so it's going to absorb quickly, which makes for easy application.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that is concrete when it's poured fairly consistent in its porosity, so you don't have to worry too much about the color consistency, or is it you got to be super careful you don't put too much on in one place and too much on and less on another? Like, is it a challenge to get consistent colors? Is my question.
Not at all, because you're not going to apply anything onto that concrete for at least 28 days until it cures out 100%, and that's what it takes, is 28 days.
Okay.
After that, the stain becomes friendly, and any blotching which may occur for whatever reason automatically goes away, because again, that stain will penetrate into that concrete.
Okay. Annette's from Massachusetts, by the way.
Oh, all right, Annette.
Thanks for joining, Annette. See, Len on Facebook. What's the best way to address moss and mold on a paver patio? I'm afraid to power wash because it'll blow away the hydronic sand, or is that what it's called? The hydronic sand? The
Polymeric.
Polymeric.
Yeah.
So let's think about cleaning that.
I don't know. I recommend power washing it, and if you have to go over it again with the polymeric sand, then re-sweep the joints. Right?
Yeah, you're gonna blow the joints out no matter what.
We were just talking about this.
I know.
Dust versus polymeric sand.
Yeah.
I'll let you run with it though, because.
Well, just to answer the question about how to get rid of moss, which is why you're gonna move the sand, because to get rid of moss, you're going to have to, a mason's trick is bleach, actually. So you use some bleach diluted with water just a bit, and then you're going to have to get the scrub brush out and kind of scrub it off, which is why you're going to lose the sand anyway.
Okay.
But to get back to Jen's point, power washing probably might be best at that.
Okay.
Gentle power washing?
Gentle.
All right, Len. Hopefully that helps. Thanks for joining us, Holly. We got time for one or two more. So, Holly on Facebook is asking: we have a brick patio that we will replace with a raised deck. We want to move the brick to another spot. What's the best practice to do that? I understand we may need to put a layer of gravel or something like that. So it sounds like maybe they're pulling the brick patio up and going to relay it somewhere else.
You have to do the same base as you would do a patio. And depending where they are, again, in Florida, you don't need much of a base. In New England, you're going to need the foot. Okay. Right?
Gravel, sand or stone dust on top of that, and then your paver, yeah?
Okay.
It's all like that song. It's all about the base, and you don't have that base. It's
Jen, what about the rails, Jen? A lot of people forget the rails, those plastic rails that hold everything together once the pavers are in. If they don't put those plastic ties and rails in, that patio, no matter what, no matter how well you did your prep work, is going to walk away. Sometimes gravity will just pull it away without those rails. So
the patio
edging.
Someone else asked about how do you keep that properly pinned in the ground? How do you get that to not heave?
You use the 12-inch spikes, and if you check your patio once a year, you'll notice that those spikes, 12-inch spikes, are moved a little bit. Sometimes you can just tap them in with the hammer. They don't usually pop up. And it seems like the frost just can't get enough grab to push that pin up. I've never really had them not work. So,
do the spikes go into the gravel or into the earth?
Into the earth. So you're right side outside of the gravel with that rail, right? Because it's a shoe. So
Mhm.
it sits 2 inches beyond the brick, which is usually the dirt. Some people overdig their patio, and you will go into patio. So good point, but
Because someone just asked that question, like, how
Okay.
do I get it from popping up every year?
they'll this frost just doesn't grab that spike the way she's thinking it will.
Okay.
But again, if you go down with those 12-inch spikes and just check them the year after, you'll see the head of the spike may shift one way or the other, but it's not popping out.
Okay.
So gravel, sand, and then brick and perimeter. What'd you call it? What's the perimeter called?
Just
Plastic.
edging.
The edging.
edging.
Plastic edging.
It
Keep it
can
all-
be plastic or metal.
Okay.
But just to get back to what Chris just said about sand, that
Mhm.
sand could be stone dust as well.
Okay.
I actually myself prefer stone dust, but some of these pavers that Jen and I are talking about, they don't want you to use stone dust. They want you to use sand, but not the regular sand you would think. It's not a concrete sand. It's not a brick sand. It's actually a mix. The pavers that I just laid in a patio, the paver company had a specific sand mix that they wanted me to use. So that would take the place of the sand that Jen and I always call out, sand or stone dust. But just another thing to be aware of when you're doing your patio, because that's fairly new. That's only the last few years that we've been starting to see them name a sand.
That gravel base and the sand or stone dust or whichever it is, are you using a power tamper at each of those layers, or is it hand tamping? Like what? How?
Ideally, it would be a compactor that you would so like every 3 inches or so, compact, so all the stones start to lock together and create that base.
Okay.
But then it's still good enough to have the drainage come through, and then the last 2 or 3 inches is what you're gonna either stone dust or sand. That's what you're gonna set your paper in.
Yeah.
And that will allow for play to adjust it to make it level.
Don't forget, Chris, that under this gravel, if you have a boulder or a rock, the frost is going to push that rock into the gravel. When the frost dissipates in the spring and the rock retrieves, that gravel fills right back into that spot. That's why you won't have the sinkage. And that's why we like a bigger gravel base than a smaller base. If someone said, you need a 12-inch base and you went 13, you're not hurting yourself at all.
Got it. All right, that's a great tip. I didn't know that was the purpose. Is that the main purpose of the gravel?
That's the main purpose. Yeah, you can't handle the frost in New England. There's rocks being spit up, in the rock rotation process, every single winter. So that's what that gravel does, is it absorbs that punch. And then again, we build it so when the rock returns to where it came from, that gravel fills right back in, and you'll see no effect usually on the top. That's why Jen and I always say, don't skimp on the base or the prep work, and don't forget your ties. If you forget or don't do a great job on any of those steps, you're going to see the sinkage in the brick, the bluestone, bluestone, whatever your product is, but you'll see it.
Got it.
It's all about the prep, no matter
Right.
scraping the wall, like whatever, it's like
We
it
have
takes the
videos.
longest, but
You guys have videos on our site and in segments about how this whole process. Go check out our website. Holly, hopefully that helps. Sounds like you got some work ahead of you and that, digging those layers and getting all that in. But great question and thanks for writing in.
you could do it.
What's that?
I was like, you could do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
All right, so we are out of time. I wanted to just, before we go, let folks know that have a last chance to enter our Home Depot $250 gift card giveaway is by tomorrow at 3 p.m. on our website. So check out thisoldhouse.com to enter to win that. And next week, we'll be back talking about electrical projects with Heath and Ross. Mark, Jen, thank you both so much for your time. And thanks everyone for watching, joining us, and enjoy the rest of your week. Stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.
It's nice talking rocks with you guys.
Yeah, great, Jen.
All right, take care, guys.